Breaking news tonight, the urgent sickness warning at major U.S. airports. The CDC announcing immediate screenings for a new mystery virus from China at some of the nation's busiest hubs. Dozens have been sickened, at least 2 dead. The first flight arriving this evening. Teams from the CDC being deployed.
The earlier we can detect this virus, the better we can understand it, and the better we can protect Americans from it.
The symptoms they'll be looking for.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because actually my daughter was in New York City on some dance stuff that she does, and I went and visited her for a weekend in February. And just on the heels of that, we came back, and COVID started to get more talk, And when things were being shut down, the economy, when the government said, "Hey, we're going to shut down and flatten the curve," for I think the initial thing was just for a couple of weeks. I was one of those really smart, forward-thinking people, since you asked the question that way, that said, "Oh yeah, a couple of weeks, no big deal." And so that's kind of on our board. I was like, "Yeah, we're gonna a couple of weeks, it's no big deal." A couple other people on the board were like, "Hang on, Mike, you sure?" You're like, wait. So that's how good a prognosticator I am.
I first started thinking it was going to be a threat actually kind of late in the from the time in which I remembered learning about COVID. So sometime in the fall of 2019, I started to hear about this COVID, shortly thereafter, maybe early winter. But I was thinking it was going to be a threat to potentially to our country and also to our business. Sometime in the early winter, say January, February of 2020. That's when it first started to think, this could be something pretty serious.
I think from day one, I think at the time I was probably watching too much news, so I right away was hearing about it and stayed on top of it because it sounded pretty serious. If you wanted to take it serious, it sounded pretty serious. And then it really didn't take long. I had someone pass away, a cousin, close cousin. And so, for me, I wasn't one of those, non-believers. I was like, no, this is real. This just happened to a guy who's young and somewhat healthy. So for me, we took it serious right from the get-go.
So I think I heard about it along with everyone else through the media around, what would that have been, about Christmas, early January of 2019. I started to become a little bit more conscious of how it might affect me personally and our business. I would think in February of that year. And then certainly by early March, we knew that trouble was coming down the pike.
So I first heard about COVID probably near the end of February 2020. Prior to that, we did hear some things that it was, another virus that was coming overseas from China. And I thought, maybe it's just another swine flu kind of thing. Not a big deal. Didn't think anything of it. I was actually vacationing in Mexico in late January, and there was no talk about it whatsoever. Came back and then started hearing more talk that it has shown up in the United States in February. And then, that's about when we realized that this could be something that was coming our way that could affect business for the first time in our lives.
The first weekend of November would typically be very busy here. All of these fields would be busy with competitors, some 400 teams starting their winter season indoors. But this week ahead, the fields are just like this, empty, as indoor facilities for youth sports have to stay closed.
My name is Joe Fernando, and I'm with Sports House Indoor Sports in Redwood City, California, which is just halfway between San Francisco and San Jose. We started our business back in 2012, started the planning process back in 2010, and have been opened up successfully since then until the COVID hit back in March of 2020.
My name is Craig Elliott. been running the Dulles Sportsplex in Sterling, Virginia since 2003. Been running the Michael and Sons Sportsplex at Rockville since 2000, actually December 2000, and the 422 Sportsplex in Pottstown, Pennsylvania since 2006.
My name is Afram Nazai. I operate indoor sports facilities and one outdoor sports facility in Albany, New York. I've been at this now for a long time, since 1990. So lots of stories.
My name is John Watt. I've been in the business for, 17 years. Got into the business in Fredericksburg, Virginia, where we saw an opportunity for a sports facility, and we developed one there. We expanded that facility 3 years later, and then built a new facility down in Virginia Beach, Virginia. We expanded to our third facility, managing property for another private owner in Pennsylvania, at United Sports Training Center. Then our fourth facility was our first public-private partnership, and that is the Jeff Rouse Women's Sports Center in Stafford, Virginia, which we lease from Stafford County and operate it. Our fifth facility was back down in Virginia Beach, the Virginia Beach Sports Center, a large sports tourism facility built by the city of Virginia Beach for $6 to $8 million, opened in the middle of the pandemic. So that was a ton of fun.
I'm Patrick Kane, co-owner of Boulder Indoor Soccer and Longmont Indoor Soccer out here in Colorado. We've been doing our businesses since opening in 2003 in Boulder, retrofitted warehouse, and then come 2010-11 started buying land to develop our own facilities in Longmont, and then following on Pearl Street here in Boulder.
Hi, I'm Mike Garrett. I'm one of the owners and board members for Let's Play Sports. We're a company that operates 24 indoor soccer locations across the country. Been in business a long time, 30 plus years, and happy to be a part of the U.S. Indoor Conference.
I'm Scott Van Pelt here at ESPN. This astounding and unprecedented story continues to evolve. At halftime with Adrian Wojnarowski, I suggested that we would speak to him soon. I had no idea that it would be this soon. He has just tweeted within the past 2 minutes that the NBA is suspending the season. I say that understanding that as we speak, the game in Dallas is continuing.
Yeah, I think in the beginning, like all of us, it was such a fluid situation. Nobody knew what to expect. I mean, some people were thinking they were going to, we're all going to die in the next 2 months, or, what they were learning from the media. So we were all kind of in it together. But then we had some diehards that were upset that we stayed closed and didn't understand why we would stay closed. I think the biggest issue that we had was learning about the kids that were having mental issues during this whole time. Not going to school, all of a sudden their club sports or their participation sports or whatever it was just totally taken out from underneath them. And here they were sitting at home. So we had a lot of concerned parents calling us, asking us when we think this would open up. And we just told them we don't have a crystal ball. We're not a government agency or anything. So that was, I think, the hardest part, was listening to parents talk about what their kids were going through mentally.
We voluntarily shut ourselves down Friday, March 13th. Kind of have that one locked in my brain because we've never shut down really for anything besides like a power outage in 18 years. Even during a snowstorm, we don't close as long as people can get here. Anyways, yeah, March 13th, we shut down. We were ahead of the game of most places. But we were getting calls prior to that week from customers, on both sides. One saying, I can't believe you're not shut down yet. The other half saying, I hope you're not shutting down. And we just kept getting, it was 50-50. Couldn't please anyone. So we just made that call. And then literally we closed on a Friday. The following Monday, the city came in and shut down all public businesses in Boulder County.
In general, the reaction was expected. The customers expected there to be a shutdown.
So COVID at first was a little bit like a snow day, in the sense that whenever we have a snow day, if we remain open, half the people are mad that we stayed open. If we close, half the people are mad that we closed. And so I hesitate to put any percentages on it, but certainly COVID was similar. There was a chunk of our customer base that was very glad that we were closed. And there was a chunk of our customer base that was very sad that we closed.
Breaking news from Washington tonight, our Kayla Tausche following that for us. Joins us now on the Newsline. Kayla, what do you have for us?
Scott, the Senate at this hour has just passed a bill that would significantly increase the flexibility of loans provided by the government to small businesses under what's called the Paycheck Protection Program. The changes in this bill would include extending the covered period of loan forgiveness to 24 weeks from 8 weeks, and also eliminating restrictions on how much of that money must be spent on payroll.
There was a couple different avenues that we took. We did qualify for the PPP, but in the second phase of it, I guess the first phase, when they put it out back in, I think, April or May, everybody used that money right away. It's not that we didn't qualify, there was just no money, but I think what they did is they upped the funds. So we were able to get that. And I think we got almost a couple $100,000 to get us through, because we didn't know when we were going to open back up. So that got us through great. And then again in December, when California, we were forced to shut down again to do youth sports. We had to get a little more PPP. That was a lot easier to get. There was a lot more funding, so we were able to get it. On the first one, we've already gone through our accounting, so we've already qualified for not having to pay it back. Our second one that we got through, we're going through that right now. But once you go through the process, and the second time around is a lot easier to go through. And then California and our county, we got a little bit of money because our county had some funds available for small businesses, and the state had some money for small business. So little chunks here and there we were able to get to survive.
So I have someone who's got, an accountant background and is really good in dealing with the government and filling out the proper forms and the bank paperwork. And so we really maximized that. We took full advantage of that. Whatever was being offered, we made sure we worked with our bank and we filled out all the necessary paperwork. And so we really did well in that end. I have 2 that I own and 3 that I lease. And so again, with the leases, they gave you a way out. Hey, you don't have to pay for your rent, your lease, which was great. And the banks, again, didn't need the money for the place I owned. So we kind of got a buy. It was like a pause on expenses, but also pause on income.
Myself and my partners, we own and lease the buildings. So we own the land. Obviously, that's set up on an LLC, the land and the building, the sticks and the bricks. And then you got the business entity as its own S corps. But we mirror both sides. So own and lease to ourselves, I guess we'd say. Through working with the bank, was able to get deferrals, just straight 100% on their side. I was in an SBA 504 loan throughout COVID. It was the easiest way to build and develop the properties with the least amount of money down through the SBA program. So that 50% of the bank was deferred and just straight put on the back end of the amortization. We were lucky enough to have 6 months of no mortgage payments whatsoever, and in the following 3 months of the half. Yeah, I keep my reserves pretty high. So I was comfortable with that, and then plus with the bank working with us and the SBA and the PPP coming through, I was confident that we'd be able to maintain.
The bureaucracy of the Small Business Administration and other federal and state agencies has, it's been an experience working with them. But we did, like most folks, we did the PPP, and we did both rounds of it, and we are just now getting to the end of the process of applying and having all those loans forgiven. Through the IRS, we did the employee retention credit, and we were awarded those credits, but haven't received any of those funds yet. We also worked through the Small Business Administration and did the economic injury disaster loans. That has been a process. We were rejected for all of our loan applications initially, had to go through an appeals process, were granted loans, and we are now in the process, since they have changed the loan limits from 150,000 to 500,000, and I believe last night they changed them again to 2 million. Again, it's been a process because all of our initial applications, which involved nothing more than asking for more money and providing them a new Form 4506T, they rejected all of them, saying that they didn't have enough information, despite having existing active loans with the Small Business Administration. So we're working through that. Understand that, like everybody, they're short-staffed and bringing in new folks that are probably not trained. So we just have to play the hand of cards that we have been dealt.
When we got shut down, like a lot of people, we were very concerned, and we immediately sprang into action like a business operator would, and we cut costs where we could, and we kicked the can down the road on certain initiatives or projects that we were going to undertake this year that were going to cost us money. We say, hey, we're going to hold off on those. We had cash on hand and operating lines of credit, and there was the PPP support from the government. We got in line very quickly and participated in that. So we came through the whole event, and I guess I would say operationally, you probably can ask me that too, but operationally, the places that were able to get back open, we did a very good job. Our staff did a great job of getting our leagues reestablished, and in some cases after a lengthy shutdown, and making them positive again. So, knock on wood, we did fine.
The coronavirus pushing unemployment to its highest level since the Great Depression, as more than 20 million Americans are newly out of work. 10 News reporter John Horn explains why some jobs that went away may take years to come back.
It's an interesting question because we paid everybody, including our part-time staff, for a period of time while we were closed. So very few people did that. We literally paid our hourly people for a while we were closed, months. And then at some point, with some of the places that were closed, it didn't make sense to do that anymore. Of course, for us and even for them, frankly, some of them would go get unemployment or what have you. But we definitely did what we thought was everything we could do, because it was I would say yes, the staff and how we operate is a key element to our success, and I'm sure it is with every business. And so we wanted to make sure that we were doing the right thing for our staff, whether it be not putting that at some risk that we wouldn't take as an owner on the front lines, or ask them to do stuff that we wouldn't do, and take care of them where we could in terms of their employment.
Since we had no idea how long we were going to be shut, we had to lay off all of our employees except for the general managers at all of our facilities. So to start at the front end of the pandemic, we weren't doing anything other than some just general maintenance stuff that the GMs could handle. But mostly they were managing their customers and the communication, because as you can imagine, there was lots of back and forth. When are you going to reopen? How come you're closed? Just back and forth, all the different kinds of questions. And the GMs were mainly handling that. When it was, when we first saw that we were going to have the ability to hire some folks back. That's when we set about putting folks to work, cleaning the facility, coats of paint, stripping floors, grooming fields, repairing nets, just all the things that everybody should do all the time that sometimes because of the busyness get deferred. We took care of a lot of deferred maintenance.
At first, before the PPP money came in, I had to lay off staff because we were shut down completely. A lot of my staff, like a lot of us in the industry, are part-time coaches. So my main salaried employees I kept on regardless, but coaches, I had nothing to offer them, or no job for them to take. I explained to them once that we have applied, that I applied for the PPP, and once I came in, I would notify all of them that they would start getting, they'd be put back on. And I brought them back on at the same rate and average weekly hours that they would take. So as soon as that money came in, we did that to PPP round 1 and 2. So they were only laid off at the beginning, and then we were able to maintain them throughout it.
Did you lose any staff permanently? Did you get most of these people back?
We got most of them back. It's a different tangent, but as of right now, post-COVID, there's no one here to work. I can't say no one, but it's very difficult to hire people right now. I think the whole country's having this project. I think a lot has to do with an unemployment benefit, which just ended, I think, September 4th. I haven't seen much change, but yeah, hiring is very difficult. You either, hire someone, they train for a couple of days, and then they just don't show up the next day. Or, you used to put on an ad on Indeed or Craigslist or anything, you get, 30 employees in 1 week, and then kind of pick through the resumes and go after what you need. Now it's 1 or 2, and you're hiring people that, in truth, I probably wouldn't have hired pre-COVID. But, it's where we're at. So you're hiring people that are underqualified or extremely overqualified, and paying a lot more for either one.
What's amazing here is that your sales in the first quarter were up 47% compared with the first quarter of 2019, not just 2020, 2019. Why?
Well, we're seeing a lot of people continue with the activities that they picked up during the pandemic, like fishing, camping, riding bikes, working out, and people found new hobbies and they enjoy them and they're sticking with them.
Is it those outdoor categories that are doing better relatively than, for example, tennis, golf, baseball, basketball?
No, we saw team sports was one of our best performing businesses this spring because, quite frankly, kids couldn't get out and play baseball last year. And so they were out. Golfers continued golfing. Mm-hmm. And one of the interesting things is we actually saw football was a big sport this spring, as a lot of kids who couldn't play football in the fall were playing 7-on-7 and spring ball in the spring.
Yeah, so you're picking up on team sports, picking up on outdoor sports.
Not quite. So three things are not back to normal. Okay, birthday parties is almost still zero. We're contemplating whether we even deal with it right now. That's one. Two, you have adult leagues are still not where they should be, the numbers, but we're getting close. When I say close, it's between 80 and 90%. And then youth, we're there. Youth, we're meeting all the numbers we met before.
We think we're going to be back to, if not above, our sales from 2019, because I don't even want to look at 2020. We should be at 2019 levels in January. We actually had probably one of the busiest Augusts we've ever had. In fact, it was the busiest August that we've ever had since we opened up. And I think it's because of our new business model. I think it's, with all the volleyball and, soccer coming back pretty much full time, all our fields and courts were used a lot.
So we had a pretty good rush back. And the two main groups were adult recreational athletes and youth competitive athletes. They wanted back in, they wanted practice time. For some of the local clubs for youth competitive athletics that had been not allowed to do things, and for whom municipally owned assets, outdoor fields, were still unavailable. I think a lot of county owned and city owned fields didn't become available until the fall, right? So for that whole summer, the fact that we had indoor fields or courts or outdoor fields, folks that had not used us before were coming to us because they couldn't get fields, et cetera, because those were all still closed. So we saw a rush of business that way. We did not see the sort of youth development activities, your little kickers and soccer tots and camps and things. Those were very slow for us coming back. But then fast forward a year to 21, and I'm sure there's a certain level of cabin fever that was going on, but the youth programming, the camps, the youth development courses, those came back stronger than any other product that we had. So we had an amazing summer this past summer in those areas.
Youth came flying back. Just like myself, I have a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 15-month-old. I was ready for them to get back out, see friends, stop living in the house, for our sanity and for theirs. So we saw the youth bounce back very fast. And, even this summer was both for our outdoor camps and indoor camps, highest numbers we've ever had. So youth came back, adults took a little while longer. In Boulder, our clientels are, probably more leaning towards the side of being more conservative of using masks and being careful of it, probably opposed to other places in the country. So adults took a lot longer. But once the vaccine started rolling out, then people were feeling comfortable. Even in the middle of the leagues, once the mandates lifted, to say, hey, we're pulling masks. We had some pushback of players saying, hey, I didn't sign up for this. I want to still wear a mask. They were a small percentage. But then they, after a week or so, or probably even less, once they talked to their team and they got the consensus for their team, and they're like, no, we don't want to wear masks. It was usually kind of 1 or 2 people that would kind of fall off, and the team would maintain together, because playing soccer with a mask on is hard. Overall, everything is pretty close to back to normal. The adult leagues are probably at, I'd say 85, 90% of what we usually do. Coming into the fall and winter, we'll have our youth leagues, which didn't happen at all. Even when we came back in, there were no youth leagues before the holidays or after the holidays of 2020 into 2021. So we'll see what that does. I see that bouncing back pretty solid. But yeah, besides that, things are back.
They're getting there. Very, very encouraged by how bounce back. And I would say when we opened back up, we were like, not to speak about competitors too much, but we were way 2-1 over our competitors in terms of team numbers right away. So again, I give our managers credit. They're like maybe what I was talking about before, talking to team contacts, and having a good relationship and being able to answer questions and communicate effectively. And it seemed like our leagues did bounce back. I don't know too many people when I wouldn't say we are either, like our pre-COVID levels 100% right now. Some locations certainly are, but overall, I think there's still, this is the thing for this year, I think, is like how bad the question, probably one of your questions, but is COVID or variant Delta 19 going to be a big hindrance this year? Is it going to fade away? We don't know. Can't read the future. But I think the secondary thing that we saw last year was even when we had the ability, when the government or your state said, hey, you guys can operate your indoor business now. If it was one of those places where the governor or the state was really, really closing everything and really, really harping on safety and kind of whipping up our fervor, in my opinion, about danger, the opinion or the perception of the populace was a little slower to get comfortable. We're going to go do our regular activities again. In another state where, again, maybe the government said, hey, earlier, you guys can be open. Here's what you got to do to be safe, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We found that the teams bounced back quicker because the perception of the players was, it's not as risky, because we're not hearing that. If the government's telling you every day, stay in, stay in, stay in, stay in. Well, at some point, those people are a little slower to say, I'm going to get back to my normal activities. When the people were allowed to come back and play, and you kind of factor in that, this maybe answers your question a little better. I think the players were super excited to get back to the regular activities, super enthused about it. And I think in that standpoint, we've been very pleased and very encouraged by what our customer base, and even what we see with other people too. I think people coming back and playing.
I think with time, I think all of the programs will come back. I would say that the question becomes, how long is it going to take? That's going to be the big question. And I think it's going to depend on the area that, that you're referring to. My hunch is that the Pennsylvania and Virginia programs will return the quickest, and the Maryland programs will probably return the slowest out of the three.
So I wouldn't say we've changed at all of how, except for financial wise of keeping higher reserves and paying attention to what could happen in the future. We really haven't changed much of what we're doing, and kind of just focusing on our soccer side. And that's what we are. We're Boulder Indoor Soccer, Longmont Indoor Soccer. And it's always kind of just been, tangential side things happening with other sports. And we're just, focusing on what we do, which is soccer. And that's our community that supported us. And that's what we are. So I think that's kind of what we kind of narrowed in more on.
Yeah. So business model changed extremely for us. We realized that if we were to stay open, we needed our partners to get more involved from a financial standpoint, one, and two, from a remodeling our facility to adhere to all the mandates that were going on. So what we did was kind of unique. We had two soccer fields, turf fields. We converted one of them to a whole volleyball court. So we were able to put 4 more volleyball courts on there. In the meantime, we had a second volleyball club that lost their facility, closed down, that needed a facility to come on in, and were willing to sign a long-term lease with us. In order to do that, we had to have them pitch in to convert our field over, which they were glad to do. And so it worked out great. We were able to put new curtains in to divide the courts. They went through pod classes or pod training that we had to do, where you had the same 12 kids in a program. And that's kind of how we started building things back up. It was because of the help of our partners. And one of the things that we did was we told them, if you financially put in the money to help us remodel the facility for our new business model, we will give you credits. In other words, it was discounts on your hourly rate until you're paid back the money that you put in. So each club put there's 3 clubs that got involved. They put in $150,000, so $50,000 each. And in a year, we've been able to pay them back via credits and discounts on their court rental space.
Not really. I don't have people working from home as much. I mean, we did it at first. No one had to come in, just do your work, The 3 people I kept working, I was like, you don't have to come in. But it's a place where you interact with people. They need to be here. So, you need hosts. You need managers to get the numbers in. You need managers to communicate with the teams. So for us, it wasn't one of those like IT things where you could just do it at home, or you can make sales calls from home. So we did not change it. Would we change it if COVID came back with a variant? I would maybe say hey, we don't all have to come in the office. You can work 2 days at home, 3 days in the office. So we could adapt if we had to. but I don't think we need to do it now. I think we need more cash flow, but it's not, I'm sure if you read any business book, it'll tell you, you should always have at least 1 year of operating in case like something happened where, let's say there was a fire or whatever. And so you don't lose your people. It's good to have 1 year worth of money, expenditures, and for us, that'd be like putting in $2 million in the bank. So it's not an easy number to attain.
Well, the first thing that's changed is, we have a real concern, our customers have a real concern over security. So the implementation of memberships for every single person that comes into the building, regardless of whether they're playing or not, is probably the biggest thing. And I think the acceptance too of customers to this type of charge is something that's new, and I think it's going to be something that sticks with us. I think people are going to understand the importance of what prior to COVID-19 would have been maybe considered superfluous or even, minor or superfluous security. But I think people now realize that this type of security is crucial. And so people are going to be willing to pay. I'd say the only other things in terms of what we have to offer is, I think, program is going to have to definitely be tighter. And that's only because I think there's probably going to be some lingering effect of people scrambling to get outdoor spaces to do their programming, say in the winter. That may stick with us for a little bit. So we're definitely going to have to think of new creative ways to make our programs more interesting, so much so that people are willing to come indoors rather than go to their outdoor field.
Business model overall, I would say the big picture is the same. Our particular model is, again, not that saying this is how everybody has to operate, because they don't, and there's other successful models, but our general talking points are: we own the real estate, we focus on leagues, we try to be good at running leagues, of course, because that's our core. We're always looking to grow, so we're always looking to see if there's another facility out there that would really fit that model. I would say if you're asking about like strategically, I think we didn't foresee COVID, but we were in a good position to deal with it, whether it be cash on hand and working capital lines of credit and good banking relationships and I think good knowledge of how to kind of really tackle this when we got hit with it, to cut our costs and figure out how to operate. So we dealt with it pretty well. Not giving us an A, but at least effectively. If it does anything to come through that, is to maybe say, hey, you can't predict those things, and so let's make sure in the future we're just as well prepared when that happens, that we have cash reserves and lines of credit and good banking relationships and et cetera, so that we can, if something unforeseen like that occurs, that we can deal with it. A lot of businesses were unable to, a lot, it's just, and it's, there's frankly, a lot of indoor soccer facilities have really taken on the chin. And so it hasn't been good for anybody, but I would say we were, lucky or good, like I said, maybe a little of both, in the right spot to come through it soundly.
Again, it somewhat remains to be seen whether our tight operations model that we were forced to adapt because of the low revenue environment of the gradual reopening is sustainable, right? We're delivering at a fraction of the cost what we used to deliver, if that makes sense. Payrolls are coming back up, but they're not at what they used to be. And so we have to be careful to make sure that staff aren't overworked or getting burned out. But at the same time, we've just become more efficient across all of our product lines and business models. I hope that sticks, while at the same time, I have to be cautious about the team and making sure the team is well cared for.
Well, in focus this morning, our special series, The New Normal. All this week, we're talking about getting out there again and restarting parts of life that the pandemic shut down. The COVID vaccine has been a real game changer, hasn't it? Many of you say you're less anxious about socializing with others who've also gotten a shot. Some restrictions are easing at restaurants, schools, sporting events, maybe even your job. So are you ready to go back when you get the call?
I think it's hard to answer that question right now because I don't know that we're out. But for certain, some things that have changed, and we'll see if they stick, right? All of our own attention to cleanliness and disinfection. I'm hoping that those last for everybody, right? Because those are just good practices anyway. Doing more remote transactions, touchless transactions, I think that's going to stick. We certainly have fewer front counter interactions than we used to. I think folks are going to the website to do more. We were already very much there anyway, but it seems that now that was a move. We haven't really, the customer base, the huge increase we saw in kids coming into the facility over the summer, I'm hoping that sticks for next summer, right? I don't know how much of that was a result of people just feeling cooped up and they needed to get out, and whether next summer they will have that same urge. We're hoping that we gave them a good experience across all our facilities and that they're going to return because of that. But, you'll have to ask me a year from now whether those were sticky customers who stayed in the facility.
Well, I think our eyes have opened that we are in a susceptible business, and virtual stuff does not work very well in our business. We did everything we could, but that's not the answer. People need to, see people see each other, and it's their night out. We all know that, it's their exercise, things like that. So in the past, we didn't have many things that could hurt our industry. When the economy dropped, our businesses did better because instead of going on vacation, you sent your kid to summer camp, or instead of, again, spending money somewhere else, you were saving your money to keep your recreation and your fitness up. So we never saw anything that was really ever hurting our business until the pandemic hit. And yeah, it hit our industry harder, or just as hard as, the worst ones that could. So I don't think it's changed. I think it's kind of opened our eyes that now we need to be prepared that something like this happens again, and just see where it's at. But I think that just goes back to keeping higher reserves and staying true to your customers, so that they're going to be loyal when something happens again.
Well, I think this pandemic has changed people for the good. I think people are going to be, I know what I mean by good is I'm not necessarily saying like good or evil. I'm saying like it's changed people, and they're not going to, I don't think people generally are going to change back to the way it was pre-COVID. I think people are going to be way more sensitive to smaller risks. And in this case, in terms of running a building, I think that people are going to be much more willing to pay for what they considered pre-COVID to smaller protections against that risk. And so for example, being able to track who's in your building, being able to prevent people who might not be, who might not be someone you want in your building, I think is going to be a much more important thing for people, something that they're going to be willing to pay for. I think that spectators, for example, I think spectators will completely understand if you're charging some amount of money to keep track of their presence in the building. And then, and that goes beyond just the contact tracing. Contact tracing is one important aspect to it. And if you think back with this pandemic, this thing hit pretty quick. So if you already had in place some sort of way to contact trace, you could have right out of the gate, prevented some of the spread. But of course, that wasn't put in place. People weren't used to that level of security. But now that it happened, I think people have been informed or trained on, the importance of it. And so I think people are going to be more willing to, when they enter a building, understand that, paying a small security price for even just that is worth it.
I'm back to normal the way I always operated. So it's hard for me to say what a new normal would be. I mean, obviously, we should keep our places clean. And so that's one thing we can do. But still, I just don't know how we've changed. I mean, we're still operating with leagues. We're still rent time. The only thing is, like I said, is birthday parties might be something that I look at the profit margin being so small and say, well, maybe we should let somebody else do that. So I probably will not hire a birthday manager right now.
Well, I don't want to say it's ever going to go back to the old normal, or it will never go back to the old normal. I believe people tend to have short-term memories. And I think once everybody feels comfortable based on media, what media reports, what their political beliefs are, whatever, we will at some point in the next year, I believe, like I said, by spring, go back to some sense of normalcy. I do see when we reopen, and I don't know if, I think it's everywhere around the country, there is a huge pent up demand, an incredible pent up demand for the sports aspect of it. Not so much for the birthday parties, not so much for the major gatherings, but just to go back out there and compete and break a sweat, and just to have kids go back into clinics and camps. Huge pent up demand. So I think that demand continues as people get more comfortable. I don't know what the new normal is. I have no idea, because I don't know if we've ever seen the new normal yet. So we'll see. I think some people are going to want to wear masks and keep their masks on year round. Where we are in California, I got to tell you, before this pandemic ever hit, we have a huge Asian culture. They were wearing masks for years when they go jogging on the street or they're outside. That's just what they did. So if that becomes our new normal, then so be it. That becomes our new normal. People just may wear it may be a form of clothing pretty soon, the masks.
Sports are absolutely a positive all around. The general consensus is that there's many more positives than drawbacks here to get athletes back engaged. There's plenty of data and research that shows that those that play athletics do better in their school life and their home life. They succeed in future jobs and leadership roles. So we absolutely want to get our athletes back to play as fast as possible and as safe as possible as well.
A year from now, if we talk about it, if COVID has disappeared, or is our industry showing and individual operators showing the same numbers they did pre-COVID, I think they will be. And I think they'll, if they're good operators, they'll continue to find a way to grow. But, the game it's a great game. So I think it's our job to just introduce people to it and make it a good experience.
I think overall, the industry of indoor sports is very, very solid. I mean, this is a type of thing that goes back to even the founding of our country to a degree, and that is the participation of youth and adults in sports and in sporting events. So that's very solid. Now it's just a matter of getting people comfortable with coming indoors again, number one, and number two, if they do have an outdoor possibility, attracting them to what we provide, which is an indoor venue that's going to be much nicer than an outdoor venue, and you do that through the way in which the facility appears and looks, the temperature you keep the space at, and then finally the service that they receive.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing, and it's totally true. And the reason is because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, if you're not having fun doing it and you don't really love it, you're going to give up. And that's what happens to most people, actually. If you really look at the ones that ended up being successful, unquote, in the eyes of society and the ones that didn't, oftentimes it's the ones that are successful loved what they did so they could persevere when it got really tough. And the ones that didn't love it quit because they're sane, right? Who would want to put up with this stuff if you don't love it? So it's a lot of hard work, and it's a lot of worrying constantly. And if you don't love it, you're going to fail. So you got to love it. You got to have passion. And I think that's the high order bit.
Well, I've been around the block a long time. I was in the nightclub business during the 80s when the AIDS epidemic occurred. And that was if you had got that virus within the first 3 years, you had a 100% chance of passing away. This will pass too. This shall pass, as they say. You just have to be prepared for it. You don't want to be caught behind trying to catch up. So if you're closed, if you've had a hard time, start preparing yourself now, because we'll get through this, just like anything else. And the pent-up demand is incredible. We've noticed it just coming from the regular variant to the Delta variant. It's a huge, huge pent-up demand.
I don't know how many people you talk to on a regular basis, but I do think some of it is hanging in there. This last year has been, I don't know, it wasn't when I first opened up, but after we had a bunch of facilities, all of a sudden I was stretched really thin. We had competition everywhere all of a sudden, and had a couple of years there where we had to hang in there. And it's like, I think when you open up a business or you go through COVID, if you're committed, some of it is just like hanging on with your fingernails and kind of getting through it. So I think the people who have done that will probably be fine.
Well, I've always been a relationship kind of guy. I've always felt that you need to build a relationship with the people that you serve. And if you build a relationship, then next thing you want to build a good communication, because you always want to talk to them. You want to know. You can't always assume that you know. Like, oh, I think they'll play with masks on, or they won't play with masks on. You got to pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I'm thinking about sending this email. What do you think about it? So there's certain people that rent from you. Again, if you have these relationships, you can reach out to them and say, hey, this is my difficulty. This is what I want to do. This is what I need to stay afloat. How can you help me? How can I help you? Because really, we exist because we serve people. And so if those people tell you what they need and then you can give them what they need, then you'll make it. So I would say to everyone is continuously talk to people. Don't disengage. Don't think like, well, I have this facility, they come here and that's it. It's really, you got to build a relationship and work with these people. And almost like they're your partners. Without them, you don't go. So to me, that's what it's about, relationships. And then again, with your employees. So you got to engage with your employees and make sure that they feel that you can always consider their safety. And I think we won them over is that, at the beginning, because I tend to be a risk taker myself. So I'm a little wilder than most people, but yet I had to keep thinking, what are they going to feel like? So I would ask them, what do you guys think? Well, I really don't feel comfortable coming into work. Or somebody would go way out of state, visit, Maryland, and then they would come back, or Virginia, and we were like, hey, they should be quarantined. And then really the staff would put pressure. So listen to that, because you can't think you know everything. I think you just have to keep listening. So communication is really important with people, like we're doing now, you and I.
I would say first, look around at all the potential monetary options that are out there. Obviously, coming out of something like this, we've all been beat up to a certain degree, and you never know. There could be a local grant. There could be, federal grants that you haven't taken advantage of. So I would say, look around, see what you haven't gotten, and just apply for everything. You just never know. That's number one. Number two, really look to the idea of security in your building. I think that's an important thing that has changed. I think people's perception of security has changed. I think people are going to be more willing to pay for prevention type of things, prevention against things that could harm them in the facility. So, any kind of door fee of some kind in return for some kind of security that you can provide, I think will work. And I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of pushback on that going forward.
Put your customers first and make sure that, the kids that are coming in, no matter what age, focus on them, that they're comfortable in your spot and, they're having fun, because that's what's going to feed in every other one of your programs. Our adult leagues, kids play during the day and then the parents play at night. And as long as they know that, it's a safe spot and they're treated well, they'll stay with you if you have a good product. So I think all I would say is make sure your employees are friendly and saying hi to everyone when they walk in the door, not have their head buried behind the front desk, hiding, and just keep a good relationship with your customers and have a good relationship with your bank.
What words of wisdom do I have? Make sure you always have dry powder, because you never know when the next closing is going to come. And you don't know the next time if the government is going to be there to help us out. It would have been a real tough situation if we had not gotten the government assistance that we had received. And if our banking partners had not offered the deferrals and extensions that they had offered to us. So it's made us even more conscious of having healthy cash reserves at all of our businesses. What else? Take care of your team members so that you keep the good ones and that they're there fighting for the business when times get a little bit rough, like they did get rough for us last year.